this is why it's such a big deal now, is the power that the government has, and you are worried about what these people are going to come in and do. The government did not get to $39 trillion in debt and 23% spending to GDP, almost 1,000 agencies, because immigrants came in and voted our government to be that big. They did it because Americans, flesh and blood, hell, even white ones, voted for the government to keep getting this big. And there's enough what conservatives would consider to be Americans, true Americans right now, to decide that the government shouldn't have the power to do these things. If they wanted to, right now, they could decide that. And they could vote for people that were going to make the government smaller if that's what they actually wanted. What they want is a government that is all-powerful, that they're in control of, and they're worried about losing that control. Citizenship then and now was the right to have rights, to freely participate in our political community. The framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to every free-born person in this land. I think there's good arguments on both sides of this. I think they're probably right on what the 14th Amendment says. Now, if they go to like the intent of the people who wrote it, all of that, a little less right on what it says. Do I agree that this is the right thing? Probably not. No. As some people are pointing out, like ridiculous circumstances here, like you're on a cruise and you get off a port and you're going around America and you're from whatever country it is and you have a baby while you're there. Like, oh, okay, it's American citizen. Get back on the ship and go back home. Like, that's weird, right? Doesn't make any sense.
That's happened.
I know it does happen. That's what I'm saying.
People have been on vacation.
That is in fact ridiculous, is it not?
Potentially. I don't know. I mean,
it does seem ridiculous to me.
I don't like what he said there. Citizenship then and now was the right to have rights. What I don't like about that is that we're human beings created with inalienable rights simply by the fact that we're human beings. I mean, that was our Declaration of Independence.
The government just says that they're going to protect the rights, and they're going to stop the government from taking away rights that they're recognizing citizens have. That reminds me of the other issue I have with this. So yes, I think the birth tourism thing is ridiculous. However, we will look at numbers. That's an extremely small amount of people. Okay. Even children of illegal immigrants, which is what I thought this was always about. People are going to the more ridiculous circumstances right now to point out how crazy this is. The illegal immigrants, that's a lot bigger number. That's like 300,000 per year births that automatically become U.S. citizens. So that's a bit more, but that's less than 10% of the babies born every year. But it's a chunk over time that builds up. Like I said, there's a lot of nuanced conversation we can have with this. The other issue I have, where I think there's great arguments on both sides, is citizenship then and now was the right to have rights. What was citizenship in 1868? What did that mean? Did it mean you could vote? No. Didn't mean that. Didn't mean you could vote. Did it mean you got welfare? No. Didn't have any welfare. Like, what did it literally mean? It just meant that you were like a member here. You recognize that. What it actually meant was that you got civil rights. You had protection like trial by jury, free speech, privacy, right to bear arms. You got stuff like that we were going to treat you with the protections that we have for citizens, but it did not mean all the stuff that like being a citizen now. It literally didn't even mean that you would have the right to vote at the time that they did this. And so if you look at like the time that the 14th Amendment was ratified, I do think it's pretty simple to say that the people who did that would not agree with what that gives you now.
Well, but we have additional amendments, by the way, that gave rights to vote to women.
Yes.
For instance, the 19th, to black people. We have an amendment for that. So there were the Constitution.
People should have that.
The Constitution was later revised.
Yes.
Which is, by the way, the proper process. You know,
it
if
is.
you want to make changes.
And I get that. I'm not saying that people shouldn't have the right to vote or whatever. Not completely saying that. I mean, women who own land should have the right to vote. I completely agree with that. I'm trying to figure out like what they meant when they did this amendment. Like, why were they doing it, and what did they mean? Like, you're going to be a citizen of the U.S. Is it dangerous for you to become a citizen of? I mean, what was illegal immigration at that time? There hardly was such a thing of illegal immigration. Like there was no like we're going around finding people and deporting them or anything. There wasn't the rules that we have right now for immigration at all. So were they concerned about illegal immigrants coming here and having babies? They would have been like, "What's an illegal immigrant? What do you mean by that?"
Well, I mean, people were still coming on ships from England.
Yeah, they were exactly.
So
it was pretty easy.
Were those illegal immigrants?
No, they were still legal.
They were welcomed.
Whatever. Like there wasn't even really a thing.
America wasn't even fully developed. I mean, in 1868, how many states did we have?
You keep asking questions that I don't know the answers to,
it's
and
just
then we're going to press. Yeah, I don't know.
It's just a question.
I don't know.
We don't have to know the answer to all the questions.
Amendment 14. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So that is the important.
We had 37
sentence.
States. Easy Google.
It's a lot. That's honestly
more than you thought.
It's probably more than I thought it would be. Yeah.
Nebraska was admitted into the Union on March 1st, 1867.
And they just did not know what they were doing.
So, and then there wasn't the 38th state, which is Colorado, wasn't admitted until 1876.
If they only could have known. I don't know. So like I was saying, like, I agree that not everyone born here should just automatically be a citizen, especially considering what that means these days. Of course, as we will say, what's the real problem? What's the root cause? What are people upset about really right now? They're upset about what that gets you, basically, which sometimes is other people's money. They're upset about how powerful the government is and this system being manipulated. That's what they're really worried about. And on this, like I was saying earlier, I can't figure out if people are really mad about the birth tourism thing, which is weird, or children of illegal immigrants, and that's going to become kind of important with the conversation we have.
Now, I have another question. May not know the answer, but in the 14th Amendment, it says subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Yeah.
Is that the line that they're going after, saying, hey, these illegals are not technically subject to the jurisdiction of the United States?
So the people that were arguing against, we'll just call it birthright citizenship, were really going further than that on whether or not it was intended for people that were domiciled in the United States or who had full allegiance to the United States. A lot of the arguments, say from Clarence Thomas and Alito, I guess, would be really phrased more towards the birth tourism people and not so much towards illegal immigrants. I have some examples to show you on that. For like a lot of the arguments Clarence Thomas made had to be with domicile and people's like intent to make this their home or intending to stay here. I'm like, well, illegal immigrants are coming here and intending to stay here and make this their home. So like a bunch of the arguments,
they get homes.
Yeah, a bunch of the arguments had to do with birth tourism, which is why I said this would be important versus the illegal immigrant conversation, which is what I always thought this was about. Like, that's the thing that people really cared about, people coming across the border and having their baby, and with our whole lives we call them anchor babies. And I thought that's mainly what people were upset about on this, but a bunch of the arguments made on the dissent really have more to do with the birth tourism type temporary people and not people who intended to stay here and have this as their home. So yeah, the jurisdiction, you asked about jurisdiction. They're basically anyone who is here that's not like a foreign diplomat or whatever is like subject to the jurisdiction, is the argument that like most people agree with. I tried to take it a little too far, and it seems like they didn't argue too much with the jurisdiction thing. And I guess that's true. Everyone here is subject to our laws under our jurisdiction that can be arrested for violating the rights of other people. Like I said, like on a plain reading of what the 14th Amendment says, just the text of the amendment, that seems to be technically accurate based on what the 14th Amendment says. Doesn't mean I don't disagree with it in principle or whatever, or I don't want to go to like the intent behind it or what was common practice at that time, or what did citizenship really mean, or what were citizens getting at that time versus what a citizen gets now. A plain reading of the text seems to say that if you're here and you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof, meaning you don't have diplomatic immunity or something while you're here, that you're born here and you're a citizen. That's kind of what it says. Now, at that time, like, why did they do it specifically? They did it for freed slaves. That is why they did it. And a lot of people have made the argument. I heard Ben Shapiro make the argument yesterday, like that's clearly what this was for. Justice Thomas was going really hard on that argument, to which I would say, well, they should have just done an amendment that said like the freed slaves and their children are American citizens.
Yeah. Why did they make it
like,
a little more
it says
broad?
All persons born and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's way more broad than freed persons, you know?
Yeah, and you can tell that it was done for slavery or the freed. Go back one, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
The freed slaves in regards to the state directing the states to not make or enforce any law that shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That was obviously still happening.
Yeah.
A lot of that kind of still happened.
Continued to happen. Yeah.
Continued to happen until the 1960s,
Yeah.
where we kind of separated things out. So it was, at the time, that's what it was for. But it is interesting how they made it, the language, very broad instead of Pacific.
Yeah.
You know, they could have got Pacific on it, but we hadn't reached the Pacific yet.
That's, well, actually, kind of, they talk about California here. So this is an interesting article from Reason, and I brought it in because it brought up something very important just right off the bat here. When the 14th Amendment was introduced in the U.S. Senate in 1866, the first senator to speak out in opposition to it was Pennsylvania Republican named Edgar Cowan. He objected in part because the citizenship clause of the proposed amendment would make American citizens out of U.S.-born children of unwelcome immigrants. So he objected to it because the 14th Amendment would make citizens of unwelcome immigrants, the children of unwelcome immigrants. He says, quote, is it proposed that the people of California are to remain quiescent while they are overrun by a flood of immigration of the Mongol race? Cowan asked. And what about the gypsies that he claimed were present in his own state? Quote, these people live in the country and are born in the country. They infest society, he declared. Yet, the 14th Amendment's grant of birthright citizenship would cover them too. Quote, if the mere fact of being born in the country confers that right, then they will have it, and I will think it will be mischievous. How about that? Cowan's objections were answered by another Republican senator, Conness of California. He says, I beg my honorable friend from Pennsylvania to give himself no further trouble on account of the Chinese in California or on the Pacific coast. Quote, we are entirely ready to accept the provision proposed in this constitutional amendment that the children born here of Mongolian parents shall be declared by the Constitution of the United States to be entitled to civil rights and to equal protection before the law with others. Once again, at the end of that statement, it reminded me, what did they mean by citizenship and what were they giving to people that were born here at the time? They said that again at the end. Entitled to civil rights and equal protection before the law with others. And that Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and voting by mail and voting.
So once again, the issue is not with citizenships.
No, it's not.
Or
That's
people's rights being protected.
Once again.
It's the fact that we've created this, we've created the era of entitlements and handouts, and that's the actual issue.
Yeah.
I mean, all humans should be treated with dignity and respect, essentially. Recognize that they are God-given, or that they are made in the image of God, and should be treated with the same rights as others when it comes to life, liberty, and property. And that's basically what it was in 1868. We didn't have the entitlement programs, the welfare. We didn't have all of the things that are now afforded to citizens of the United States.
The danger with this is, of course, in this instance, we're talking about now a government that takes your property and distributes it to other people. And so that is a very bad thing that the government should never be allowed to do. Unfortunately, they are. But we keep making this argument that, well, at that time, they could have never imagined what we would have now, which sounds a lot like people arguing against the Second Amendment. Like they could have never imagined the AR-15 or whatever the guns are that we have access to. They just weren't thinking like that. They were thinking about muskets and cannons, stuff like that. And so we do have to be careful, because you can still have an AR-15, and you having that does not take anything away from anyone else at all. You use that to violate someone else's rights, and then you are dealt with. So you can still have the right to have that to protect yourself from robbers, whether they're other citizens or the government. And but now, what being a citizen, that right gives you is like the right to receive stolen property from other people that's then redistributed out. And that's just like a immediate theft that can happen in that instance. So like you're immediately giving people the right to receive stolen property. And so that I still see it as a different thing than saying that, yes, you have the right to have whatever weapons exist right now, because that's not taking any rights from anyone when you do that. It's still like a negative right. You're not hurting anyone just by having this or by defending yourself. Whereas now it's like an immediate negative that you can receive redistributed stolen property. And so that's an issue. That's an issue with a lot of like later amendments. The earlier ones were like all restrictions on the government, and this is what you have as your God-given rights plus all the others that we can't name. The later ones are like, and we're going to take your money. That's kind of like how I sum up the later amendments. And here's the power that we have to steal stuff from you. Sort of how I would sum up those the later ones. Okay, let me get
Here's
into
the power we have to violate your property.
Yeah. Back to the main issue here. Another question I have is like going to the intent of the people. Well, we didn't even really have any immigration laws at this time. And so were they really talking about like, of course it's not going to be for illegal immigrants. As we said earlier, like that wasn't even really a thing at that time. Oddly enough, most of the immigration laws started happening immediately after this amendment. Then they were like, oh, we should start restricting immigration. That's like immediately what happened.
We got too many gypsies coming to the United States.
They say less than 10 years later, they start clamping down on immigration. And of course, it's not until the early 20th century that we get the kind of stuff we have right now. Thomas made a bunch of arguments about the domicile thing and people who genuinely belong to this country. And he's talking about how it was mainly meant for blacks and all that. Here's a quote from what he said. He said, blacks were entitled to the citizenship because they were Americans. They had no other homeland, owed no allegiance to any foreign power, and were subject to no other authority. They fought and bled in the same battles, gained and gloried in the same victories, and were liable to be called upon to defend America in time of war alongside every other citizen. The first part's interesting. They had no other homeland, owed no allegiance to any foreign power, and were subject to no other authority. To which this still, in my opinion, allows, if you were to read it just like that for like children of illegal immigrants. Like you could still say that about like owing no allegiance to foreign power and were subject to no other authority. Like they came here with the intent to stay here and make this their home. I'm not saying that's right. Not saying that that's what I want to happen. I'm saying this still seems to talk about birth tourism and not the children of illegal immigrants. And I just found this all to be confusing because I thought that's what everyone was upset about. And I didn't see a whole lot of arguments that seem to pertain to illegal immigrants. Let me see here.
Looked like that excerpt, those quotes came from Frederick Douglass.
Oh, is that what was that Thomas quoting?
Yeah, Life
Douglass?
and Writings
Sorry.
of Frederick Douglass.
Sorry.
The Citizenship Clause thus guaranteed them the dignity and glory of American citizenship, so as to ensure they would never be treated as second class under the law. I mean, I feel like I feel the same way about illegal immigrants. Like I still, I'm just talk about how I feel. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I do think that people, like, I look at the ICE officers situation. I still think that they need a warrant. I still think that they should not cause harm to people, that those people have a right to life, liberty, and property, regardless of where they are in the world. And I think that America should protect those rights because they are truly human rights.
Human.
Like, those are the actual human rights.
Yeah.
That you should be afforded the rights of due process and life, liberty, and property without the government treating you any differently. And it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And because you're human.
We've always had a very like different view on immigration. So like I first off have never really cared about it that much. I've been fine. I've been fine seeing what Trump and ICE have done over the last couple of years. And I'm fine not seeing it. I think that we should have a border and it should be protected and you like should know who's coming in. I think that is smart. I'm fine with setting as many restrictions as they want on that. I don't care so much about the deportations and all that. As like people, like a lot of left libertarians would, who like get very upset about that kind of thing. Because the people, this is a weird one. The people that came here, like we were born into the current conditions of this country and rights that we have. And like we're trying to change it. The people who came here saw it and opted in to the situation. And that situation also said that they were doing it illegally and couldn't be here. And so I first worry about like the people that were born into the situation, like us, whites. Just kidding.
God.
Just kidding. Just kidding. People that are born into the situation and not so much the people who like opted into coming into the situation as it exists already right now. You know, that's like secondary in my mind for like protecting. Sorry. I know that sounds terrible. That's just how I feel. That's how I feel about it. You know? It just is.
Feelings are
it's
facts.
like an order of operations kind of thing that I have. But regardless, like we have to figure out what people are truly upset about here. And then that's where I think we have to get to the root cause of the issue. So if people are worried about the amount of people that are being born here, automatically becoming citizens, first off, the birth tourism thing is a very low amount. It's like 9,000 was the estimate from Pew Research in 2023. And it's like 300,000 for illegal immigrants in 2023 also. I don't know what the most recent numbers are. Trump posted that thing about China and President Xi and all that. And I don't know what that actual number is. It's very low. I agree that I don't like it. I don't like what China's sending people to Guam and having them have kids and then they get to vote or something. Like that's Come on, that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense that would automatically be a thing. And if you're born here, when you have no plans on staying here and making this your home at all, like just on a common sense viewpoint, it makes no sense for that to be the case. It makes way more sense for children of illegal immigrants who are at least trying to come here and make it their home and work or whatever, and they're born here and they're going to stay here and they're going to, use my property taxes for school, and then they're going to get jobs. Like, this is your home, or you're trying to make it your home. That makes way more sense than just someone getting off a boat, having a baby, and then going back home.
And how many of those you think fly over here to vote during election season and fly back?
Well, you can do absentee ballots.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You got to wait for all the mail-in ballots to come in from China. That's what's taken so long for California's results, typically. So, yeah, we went over some of the numbers here. You can see the numbers on births to unauthorized immigrant mothers, also known as illegal immigrants or illegal aliens, whatever you want to call them. The peak was in 2005 so far, what we know, 380,000. The 2023, which is the number from the Pew Research thing that I pulled up, was 300,000. That trend line is moving up. It probably moved up last year of Biden's presidency, I would guess. And my guess is it's probably declined or on its way to declining pretty sharply now because we've got way tighter immigration policies. So,
well, not policies. We're just actually enforcing existing policies.
We got tighter enforcement of our immigration laws is what's happening. So, like, if you want to fix this, here's the deal. The Supreme Court has issued their opinion, and it's going to be a very long time before this comes up again. Okay? And they have ruled, and the way that we treat Supreme Court opinions, that anyone...
Right on party lines, apparently. I mean, this is Trump's court.
Except for, Yeah, I thought
for a couple
court was bought and paid for, you know?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
They had total control. This, people born here without the specific exclusion, people born here are going to be automatic U.S. citizens, and that's going to be the case for a very long time. Rand Paul's got a constitutional amendment. Okay. It's fun to talk about. It's about as fun to talk about as ending the Fed. Great. Let's all talk about how great that would be.
Hey, I mean, amendments have passed before, Nate.
They have passed. Yeah. Typically not, like, a lot of amendments are like expansions. You know what I mean? Expansions of power amendments seem to be like the easy ones that you could pass. Restriction amendments, not so much. And so I don't see it being an amendment that's going to have any chance of passing. But if you just vote for enough Republicans, then I bet we're going to get it.
The 27th Amendment was passed in 1992. That wasn't that long ago, Nate. But out of more than 11,000 amendments proposed in Congress throughout U.S.
11,000?
Only 27 have met the strict requirement for ratification.
11,000?
11,000.
I'd like to know
more
what the U.S. government would look like if all 11,000 had been ratified.
They're probably all contradictory. And
let's have an agent get on that real quick and just build what the current state of the U.S. government would be if all of them had been ratified. I'd like to know. You're going to use up about 10 million gallons of water today having AI build out this model.
It's recycled water. It's fine.
Okay. So yes, this is going to be the case for a long time. Your fix for this, the only fix for what you're worried about is going to be much tighter immigration, like immediate fix, which Trump has been doing, obviously, but it's going to be much tighter immigration. And I'm sure we're going to see him attempt to do that, although I don't know if he's going to attempt to do it before the midterms. We'll see. The other fix for this is a smaller government. Like we mentioned this right at the beginning, Charlie. What are people worried about? What is it that they're worried about right now? They're worried about all the things that being a citizen gets you. And I guess they're worried about welfare recipients coming over, that kind of thing.
If you want to have some fun, I got some quick answers on this. If all 11,000 amendments were passed. It does say the United States would be an unrecognizable, deeply gridlocked, and legally chaotic nation.
Well, that's about the same then.
Let me just give you a few of these. One of these is really funny, actually. A chaotic government structure, so we would have multiple presidents.
Okay.
One of the amendments proposed that we would have, instead of a single president, we would have an executive council.
All right.
Of 3 or more people to distribute the power. Executives got too much power. We need to have a council,
Yeah.
Caesar needs his...
We need more Caesars.
Caesar needs his board.
Yeah.
We would have a massive Congress.
How big?
Early proposals of one representative for every 30,000 citizens.
Ooh.
So today that would mean a House of Representatives with over 11,000 members.
Each member could be specialized on each amendment.
Yeah. There was an amendment for term limits for everyone. So Supreme Court justices, senators, representatives, everybody would face strict short-term limits. And we would have a new name. So the country might be officially renamed the United States of the Earth.
Okay.
Not of America. We would be United States of Earthlings.
I don't think we should immediately write it off. There's some great ideas in there. So I think we should come back to that. Let's put a pin in that for a moment, and we'll come back to it.
We would have outlawed divorce.
Well, how about that?
A 1914 proposal sought to completely ban divorce across the entire country.
Man.
And we would have no army. A 1916 proposal wanted to put all declarations of war to a direct national vote. Anyone who voted yes would automatically be forced to enlist in the army. So we wouldn't have a standing army. We would take a vote of whether or not you wanted to go to war. And if you said yes, then you would enlist to join the fight.
Which amendment is that?
I don't know. But it's an interesting exercise. Yeah. Some fun highlights there. Unexpected highlights.
Huh. How about that?
If some of these 11,000 proposed amendments would have
we should push some of those through. I wonder how many of them would overall restrict the growth of the government. Let me segue back into our final thoughts here for a moment, because we do have to go. I know that this is gonna sound like a broken record here, but when it comes to immigration, what people are really worried about is the welfare state. And they're really worried about the power that the government has overall, because then they worry about voting and stuff like that. You're really worried about the power that the government has to take things from you or to prevent you from acting freely in your life or in the economy. And those are things that the government shouldn't be doing, shouldn't be able to do. But it's things that the majority of people have accepted that they do because they want to feel safe, or they want to help people or feel like they're helping people or whatever, or they want to get help or something like that. That is the root cause of the problem. It's why the immigration thing was not a big deal when they did the 14th Amendment. What did it mean? It just meant that you have a right to a trial by jury. You have a right to free speech. Okay, fine.
A right to walk around with your
Who
arms,
cares?
with your bare arms.
Now at that time, if it meant that you would be accepted onto all the welfare rolls, and hell, even if it meant that everyone would be able to vote, we don't even know if they would have ratified the thing. This is why it's such a big deal now, is the power that the government has, and you are worried about what these people are going to come in and do. And there are enough people. I know people, well, all these people come in and then you can't, that's the thing. They're going to get the government to do all these awful things. No, you know what? Americans have been getting the government to do these awful things already, just fine on their own, without the immigrants being the people that are pushing the government to this size. All right? Everyone wants to blame the immigrants for that, and maybe there's a little bit of blame every once in a while for that, or there's some welfare programs that we don't like, or there's refugee programs, stuff like that we don't like. But the government did not get to $39 trillion in debt and 23% spending to GDP, and almost 1,000 agencies because immigrants came in and voted our government to be that big. They did it because Americans, flesh and blood, hell, even white ones, voted for the government to keep getting this big. And there's enough what conservatives would consider to be Americans, true Americans right now, to decide that the government shouldn't have the power to do these things. If they wanted to, right now, they could decide that, and they could vote for people that were going to make the government smaller if that's what they actually wanted. What they want is a government that is all-powerful, that they're in control of, and they're worried about losing that control. They're worried about making it super powerful, and then they don't want other people to have control over it afterwards. And in that case, they're going to get exactly what they deserve. And unfortunately, we're going to get what they deserve too. But that's what they're going to get. You want an unconstitutional government to keep existing and keep being more and more unconstitutional, you will suffer the consequences. It was not like a suggestion. The Founding Fathers, as we come to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration, did not do this because they thought it would be like cool or they were bored or it was their hobby. They did it like under threat of being hung when the king received this Declaration, which is in like August or September or October. It's like it took a while for the Declaration to actually make it there, you know?
Yeah.
We're just talking about the date it was postmarked, but they were still receiving well past that, you know?
Yeah.
So
should we count that?
I'm not sure it's counted.
Was it postmarked in time?
I'm sick and tired of
King's
people.
like, I'm not going to accept this. I didn't receive it.
I'm sick and tired of hearing people complain and whine about the wrong people getting power in the government when they just keep growing the government, giving it more power. Like they want to create this massive behemoth and this massive unconstitutional government filled with people that the founders, as we shoot off our hypocritical fireworks and wave our hypocritical American flags this weekend, would come back and hang every one of you, the people that you've been voting for.
At least tar and feather.
Like most, are at least tar and feathering them.
Yeah.
And so I'm sick of hearing about it. Just once I see them actually want to start making the government smaller, then be like, okay, yeah, all right. But you don't want to do that.
Can I say I would be slightly worried about the voting if they, not really of the children born here, because that's an 18-year time frame. You know, like a lot can happen in those 18 years.
By that time, are you less American than someone else? There's probably people whose parents came across the border.
The only thing that worries
love
me,
America more than people who've lived here for 100 years or whatever.
The only thing that worried me is that Democrats did want to make a path for like literally illegals that were not born here to be able to vote like within 5 years. Now that's a problem.
We absolutely should not do that.
Yeah. That would be an actual problem of obtaining political power for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And I think that was a concern that I had. But that was literally converting illegal immigrants to have like voting rights. You know, that's not what this does, by the way. Like
I don't want to do that.
The people born here will eventually have voting rights, but it takes 18 years unless they lower it to 16. Which would be stupid. You know,
it would be.
We're raising the age of everything, like
except for
tobacco, drinking,
except for voting for the people who control the world.
Why don't we need to raise the voting age up to 21 or
at least
maybe 26.
That's
based
fine.
on science. When
That's
we're like,
fine.
hey, your prefrontal cortex is largely developed by now. You can now make rational decisions. You have the right to vote.
Selfishly, I think it should be 39. We have to go.
We do. Anyway, whether you guys like this ruling or not, it is what it is. There is a way for Congress to create stricter immigration laws that can be enforced. So Congress can act on this. I remember you mentioned, I think we talked a little bit about this yesterday after this came out, just one-on-one, that there wasn't one of the justices that did agree ultimately with the opinion, largely cited federal statute.
Well, it's Kavanaugh
which was Kavanaugh.
So this had to do with the executive order, and he said the executive order does violate U.S. law, like our immigration law or naturalization law. I think it's from the 1950s, I guess. I don't remember what year specifically. That it does violate that because the wording of that law is essentially the wording of the 14th Amendment. And maybe it's a little bit more specific, but he said that Congress could change that and that it wouldn't. So like he doesn't believe that this conflicts with the 14th Amendment, but that it does conflict with standing U.S. law. But that still is not enough to get you there. That makes it 5-4 instead of 6-3. And so all the people saying, well, we're going to have Congress do it then, they already ruled on that. They already ruled that, like, if Congress makes a law saying that person that was born here and is not a child of a foreign diplomat or whatever is not a U.S. citizen, they've ruled on that.
What they can do
immediately
is
unconstitutional.
they can make stricter immigration laws to try to keep people from being born
women
here.
from coming to the United States. And honestly, isn't that what we're all trying to achieve?
Oh, God. There's always one of those thrown in there. Multiple throughout this show.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, we're joking. There's a lot of clips. The clip farming episode.
They should.